Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. This is Bara al-Dasuqi here with you for episode number 4 of our show, Kickstart Your Recovery. What we're talking about today, our tip for today is give up giving up. How making healing your number one priority in life can make all the difference between achieving your dreams and continuing to stay stuck. And also, why recovery is actually the coolest thing that you can do with your life. Gonna talk all about this and explain exactly what I mean with you here for episode number 4, inshallah ta'ala. So I'd like to welcome everybody who's tuning in for us here. And I want to remind you that I'm here with you on the Facebook page, and I'm able to see your input and your comments. So feel free to post your comments while we're here on the show. Inshallah ta'ala, I'll be happy to give you a shout out here. In episode number 1, we talked all about how recovery is a journey. It's a process. And it's important to recognize it as such if you want to continue to make progress. So a lot of people, they have the approach of wanting to flip a switch when it comes to their struggle with whatever type of lustful or unwanted sexual behavior. They want to be able to flip a switch and be able to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with this problem that I've been struggling with. Now I can move on to other things, cooler things in my life. But when it comes to recognizing that this is a journey, this is a process, when people start to internalize that, then they start to be open to changing their approach to solving this problem, right? They're open to changing their approach, and for the first time ever, you'll see people actually willing to take a big step in their, towards their recovery, right? So people will reach out, and they've been struggling for years, but they say they reach out to, me or someone else at Purify Your Gaze and say, you know what, now's the time that I realize I need to reach out and I need to get some help with this. Or they might, join a program. They're doing something that's greater. They're making a greater investment, taking a bigger step than ever before. Once they start to realize, this is a process, and I need to be open to accepting that. So we talked about that in episode number 1. And if you haven't seen it, I do encourage you to check that out, inshallah. But what I want to talk about for today is that while this is very great, alhamdulillah, that somebody is willing to take a step towards their recovery that they weren't really open to before, there is a common pitfall. There's a common pitfall that people fall into, and I want to let you know about that pitfall today. All right? Dr. Alan Berger, he wrote a book that's called The 12 Stupid Things That Mess Up Recovery. All right? And he lists in this book various different things that people, once they start the process of recovery from their whatever behavior, in his case, he's talking about any kind of compulsive behavior, whether it's drugs, alcohol, but of course, what we're talking about here also falls into this discussion as well. And he says that stupid thing number 3 is to pursue recovery with less energy than pursuing addiction. To pursue recovery with less energy than pursuing addiction. Now, what is Dr. Berger talking about when he says that this is one of the things that people do that mess up their recovery? Well, I'd like to ask you to stop and reflect on, if you're somebody who's been struggling with some type of unwanted sexual behavior, whether it's turning to pornography like a lot of people, but it could be a number of other things as well, right? I want to ask you, to what length have you gone in order to access that particular form of acting out that you turn to? Right? To what lengths have you gone? It can be hard to face this reality. Right? It's not something pleasant that a lot of people want to think about, but it's important to do so. Right? The lengths that people go to act out may include a whole slew of things, whether it's taking those extra precautions and measures to make sure that, while you're accessing this form of acting out, that nobody finds out, right? Trying really hard to maintain that secrecy of deleting your browsing history and making sure that no evidence is left behind. Right? People go to great lengths to do that. And that's one of the things that allows this lifestyle to continue to exist. People also might go to great lengths in the sense that they'll act out despite risks that are being faced. Right? They're taking risks. They're engaging in risky behavior. Someone might find out. Their career might be damaged. Their relationships might be damaged. But yet they're doing it despite that. Right? Violating the sanctity of your marriage, an important relationship to you, yet doing something that will harm your marital relationships, neglecting your own physical well-being, staying late up at night, being drained the rest of the day, neglecting responsibilities, whether school, work, or otherwise. The point is this: it costs a lot to maintain a destructive behavior. It costs a lot, and yet many people have been paying that price, for years, right? And what Dr. Berger is telling us is that when you decide it's time to change things, don't expect that the price for change is going to be any less than the price for acting out, right? We have to be willing to pay the price for change, just like we were willing to pay the price to act out in our past life. Now that is a tall order, right? That's a tall order. And it's even more difficult for someone to accept this who's coming from a place of addiction or turning to these different outlets compulsively, because people coming from those places, they're trained to seek out quick fixes, right? I mean, people turn to these unwanted sexual behaviors as a quick fix for the problems that they're facing in their life. And maybe that's something you can relate to, right? So sometimes when people start working on recovery, they take a big step, but they're still expecting and hoping that it's going to be a quick fix, right? They put in a little bit of that effort and they start to say, well, where are the results? Show me the results, right? And the fact is this: a lot of people pay some price for their recovery, right? If you're watching this video, you're probably, somebody who's taken some steps, right, to change your life. And you're investing time to watch this video, right, to learn a thing or two about how you can do so. But my question is, are you willing to pay the full price? Are you willing to pay the full price? Because if you pay anything less than the full price of recovery, then you will not get the true, lasting, deep recovery from the behaviors that have sabotaged your progress in life for so long. Let me give you an example, inshallah. I've got a story for you folks that will show you exactly how one particular Purify Your Gaze member, we're going to call him Samir, completely made up that name, all right? That's what we're going to call him for this story. He learned that even after working on his recovery for years, he still sometimes failed to give it the importance that it deserves. And as a result, even years into his recovery work, right, he still found himself turning back to his old habits. All right. Now, he shared on the forums that by the grace of Allah, he had experienced the longest stretch of abstinence, of turning to these behaviors that he had ever experienced. He was abstinent for 4 months, right? And things were going pretty well, pretty good for him. And yet he found himself struggling, even though, again, he had been in recovery for nearly 4 years at that time. Now, let me make something clear. He was clearly making progress as he was investing in his recovery, right? But the fact of the matter remained that he wasn't where he wanted to be because he was still falling back. And at this time in his life, he was actually seeing a counselor to help him in his struggle. and he went into his counselor's office one particular day, and he started off by saying that he wasn't doing very well. He's kind of having a hard time nowadays, and yes, he relapsed yet again. And as he's sharing this story, he's speaking for probably at least a couple minutes, and his counselor is sitting there in silence, slowly nodding his head. After he finished telling, explaining his struggles and his, what he's struggling with at that time, his counselor just continued looking straight at him, slowly nodding his head, raising an eyebrow, and continuing to nod his head. After what seemed like an eternity, he finally asked, "Samir, do you want to stop this behavior?" Wow. Now this member became upset at this point, thinking to himself, does this guy not get it? Of course I want to stop this behavior. That's why I'm here. But it turns out there was a good reason that his counselor was asking this question. After calming down a bit, Samir took a deep breath, right? And he responded and he said, yes, it's important for me to stop this behavior. It's always been important for me. And mind you, right? He'd been working on his recovery for years. Anyways, he continues, he says, it's just that sometimes I tell myself that it's not urgent. I tell myself that it can wait. And there it was. There was his answer, plain and simple. When the pressure of life built up for Samir, when things became difficult, he decided that keeping clean, keeping his sobriety, as we call it in the community, was less important for him than experiencing the short-term relief from the pains of life. Right? At that time, he didn't necessarily need more counseling sessions. He didn't necessarily need to spend more years doing the work of recovery. At that point, what he needed was to ask, how important is my recovery? Am I willing to make it my number one priority, not just right now, not just for a month, right? Not just for some fixed period of time, but am I willing to make it my number one priority every single day for as long as I need to do so? Now, Samir's story is not done. When he realized that even after years of recovery work, he still did not prioritize his healing enough, he made a personal tweak to his approach. And that helped him, by the grace of Allah, to achieve sobriety, to stay clean from his old habits for nearly a year to this date. And I'm going to be sharing with you exactly what Samir did that helped him to do so, inshallah ta'ala. So stick around if you want to learn what tweak he made that helped him to make his healing his number one priority in his life. Why does recovery require so much investment? It can be so tempting to hold on with dear life to the idea that you can permanently change your behavior without investing a large amount of time and energy into the process of healing. The common assumption that people have is that stopping this behavior that they find themselves going to, it's like turning off a switch, right? And so that's the assumption a lot of people have, but when somebody struggles for years, eventually they start to realize, this isn't so simple after all. They start to realize this light switch that they've been trying to turn on and off for so long, it's actually not connected to anything at all. It's not connected to anything, right? The reason this light switch approach doesn't work is that once this habit has taken root, it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a lifestyle. Now, how is it a lifestyle? Most people don't think of it that way. Most people think that it's something that I turn to in private, but after that, I go on and I live the rest of my life, and it doesn't relate to the rest of my life, and it doesn't have an impact on the rest of my life. A lot of people think that. Sometimes I'm talking with somebody and I ask them, how does this impact your life? And they tell me, well, I don't think that it does. Right? But let me give you an example that shows exactly how, right, turning to destructive behavior, turning to these unwanted sexual behaviors is actually something that manifests as a lifestyle. Let's imagine a little 1-year-old baby, and we're going to call him Abdullah, all right? And this baby has a father, okay? So Abdullah and his father. His father, he's busy at work most of the time during the day, but he gets to spend 1 hour every single day with his little baby Abdullah when he comes home from work. When he comes home from work, babysitter packs up and leaves, and then it's just him and little Abdullah for 1 hour before it's bedtime. Let's say that every single day when his father comes home, little baby Abdullah is crying like crazy. He's crying so loud the neighbors can hear him cry, all right? And his dad has absolutely no idea why he is crying. And he doesn't know what to do to make it stop, because usually the babysitter is the one who does all the work and and takes care of the baby. But one day, he tries something to make the crying stop. He gives the baby a lollipop. He has a lollipop in his pocket. He gives it to the baby, and he didn't know what would happen, but just like that, little Abdullah stopped crying. Just like that, right? And it's amazing, because he had been living with this pain of hearing him cry day in and day out, and now there's something that he can do to make him stop crying just like that. It's perfect. So next day he comes home with another lollipop and tries it out again. Just like that, little Abdullah is not crying anymore. So next time, in order to make sure that he's always ready, he goes and buys a box of 10,000 lollipops, puts them in the closet at home. Now he's always ready, so he can give the lollipop as soon as he gets home. And now, Abdullah's father can attend to other things. He can kick up his feet. He can relax after work. And, he doesn't have to worry about this baby crying anymore. Turning to sexual behaviors is like this in many ways, right? Because when you don't know how to react to your emotional needs, that little baby that you could think of inside of you, that deep pain that you feel, you discover a quick fix. You discover something that seems to make it go away just like that, and you get hooked on it without ever realizing what happened. Of course, eventually bad things start happening. The baby becomes very, very overweight. Its mouth is full of all sorts of colors. The small teeth it has are full of cavities. And one day when this father stops and looks at little Abdullah, he sees, oh my, something is terribly wrong. Something is terribly wrong. And now the baby is crying again. But now it's crying because of the physical pain that it feels. It just feels terrible. It's just sick. And the crying is even louder than before. Can you see how turning to sexual behaviors is similar to this example, right? And if this father is going to continue trying to kind of, just cut out, use the light switch approach to change, then he's probably going to say, well, let me throw out the lollipops. Let me find some other quick fix, right? Let me find some other quick fix. And that's what a lot of people who are struggling with some type of unwanted sexual behavior, they do, because they assume that the problem is in the behavior that they're engaging in. And that's really it, right? Now, you and I can, really think about this example and recognize, well, that approach of just throwing out the lollipops that would be kind of silly. It'd be very silly, because we know that the lollipops were never the problem. There was a lifestyle problem going on. There was a lifestyle problem going on. The problem was that Abdullah's dad never took the time to really understand, why is this little baby crying after all? Why is he crying in the first place? And rather than taking the time to find out, he's resorting to different quick fixes, right? He's hoping that someone or something else is going to do the work that only he, as little Abdullah's father, can do. He's hoping somebody else is going to do the work, right? Wouldn't you agree that truly solving this lollipop, this crying baby problem would require a lifestyle change? He'd have to change the way that he relates to this baby. He'd have to probably take some time out of work to spend more time with the little baby, right? And once he gets to know better what this little Abdullah actually needs, he'd have to take the time and invest some effort to go and get that. Get it from the grocery store. Stock it up at home so he can properly take care of Abdullah's needs. He'd have to ask some soul-searching questions because he comes to realize this is not a quick fix anymore. I have to invest time and energy for this. Is it really worth it? Right? Is it really important enough for me to solve this problem on a deeper level? Or am I satisfied resorting to some other quick fix? Because if that's what he wants, he'll find another quick fix to this problem. Right? Now, can't you see that really solving your problem requires a lot more than cutting out the behavior and kind of turning that light switch off? Right? Do you see that it will require that you make changes in the way that you lead your life and make more room for self-care, make more room for thought and reflection, and possibly even other changes as you start to learn more about yourself and what you really need? You can start to make other changes in your life as well. And for some people, it meant major lifestyle changes like changing a career or even stepping down from certain leadership positions that were causing them a lot of stress in their life. Right? So all of this is to show that once the habit takes root, it becomes a lifestyle. And changing it is a matter of adopting a new lifestyle. Right? And that's why it requires a commitment. That's why it has to be a priority. So far, this might sound like a total bummer, right? Especially for the person with so much aspiration in life. Like so many people who turn to us for support at Purifier Gaze, right? The high achievers, right? The role models in their communities, so many aspirations. This sounds like a total bummer because I'm telling you, that you've got to spend so much energy seemingly digging yourself out of this dark hole, right? I want to spend my energy doing something great and fancy. I want to spend my energy changing the world. You're telling me I have to spend my energy digging myself out of a dark hole. Sounds like a total bummer. But I'd like to share with you, inshallah, a perspective on why there's no need to look at the work of recovery as something, right? As something that you wish you didn't have to do, because it is actually the coolest thing that you can do with your life. Working on your recovery, working on developing yourself, working to heal from the ailments that you've been struggling with is actually the coolest thing that you can do with your life. And rather than trying to explain that to you myself, I'm just going to share with you one of our members who was experiencing the pain that he felt because he was like, man, I really don't want to be spending so much time and energy working on just overcoming this problem that I wish I never even had, right? He was experiencing that pain because he wanted to do all these great things, but then he thought about it and he found a new perspective on looking on how to understand his recovery, and he shared that perspective on our blog, and I'm going to be sharing that with you right here, inshallah. This is what he says. He says, so what is recovery really about which makes it so great? He says, recovery is about regaining the full potential of my humanity. My humanity at its peak offers me so many things which are pure gold, things that really matter. Connecting with Allah, genuinely and deeply caring for another person, feeling connected to the creation which surrounds me, deeply appreciating the gifts of my body, heart, mind, and soul. I'm talking about gratitude, love, sincerity, integrity. I'm talking about tears and laughs, talking about dreams and aspirations, sorrow and grief, hope and celebration. This is the full human experience for which we were created. Unhealthy and unbalanced living strips this experience away from me and locks me in a place of numbness and darkness. Once I'm there, I lose sight of what I've lost. I become fidgety and anxious and needy. Life loses its flavor and its color. A keen focus, on the other hand, on my health and life balance helps restore my humanity. And continuous practice and refinement helps me to achieve new heights and gain new experiences. I know this because I've experienced it. And he finishes off, he says, there's so much for me to gain in this world, so much I want to do and achieve, so many things I want to be, and I will pursue these things with passion, inshallah. However, nothing has true value if I'm not gaining, maintaining, and nurturing my humanity. At any given moment, I must not hesitate to completely drop whatever is demanding my attention and come back to healing if that's what the situation demands. This has to be my principle in life, because in recovery, I'm gaining everything. Because everything that's good and worthy lies in my humanity. I have no way to regain my humanity except through keen focus on and commitment to my healing. Now, this is what one member is sharing on why he decided to make healing his number one priority in his life, and he didn't feel like that was too much of a burden for him, because he adopted this truer perspective on what's recovery really all about. Can't you see that ultimately it's not the flashy things that deserve your focus and your attention, because it's not the flashy things that ultimately give you true fulfillment in life, right? True fulfillment is abundantly available in recovering your true self, recovering your humanity. Now, how do you do this? How do you make healing your number one priority in life? Remember Samir's story? The guy who went in to the counselor, and he discovered that even after years in recovery, there still came times when he allowed his sobriety to lose priority. It's no longer important. And whenever he did that, he ended up slipping again. How did he address this obstacle? What did he do that allowed him to experience sobriety for nearly a year to this date? Well, when he realized the problem, that his recovery was not important enough on a daily basis, then he devised a solution. What he did is he would take time to reflect on why recovery deserved to be his number one priority every single day. Why? Why does it deserve to do that? Why does it deserve to be there on my list of priorities? So to do so, he asked the question, what would life look like 2 years from now if I were still struggling with this behavior? 2 years from now, I'm still struggling. And what would life look like 2 years from now if I were clean for that entire period of time? Very simple. He drew out the picture of these two scenarios. And when he realized that remaining stuck for another 2 years was an actual possibility, it could happen. He could imagine that happening because he had been stuck for years prior. When he realized that was a real possibility, that fact scared him out of his seat. It was a jolt to him, and it was the jolt that he needed to get moving. And he referred to these writings that he did, drawing out these two scenarios on a regular basis, on a daily basis, to remind him why he could not let sobriety lose its priority for even a single day. You see, motivating yourself is not about coming up with the rational reasons about why you need to change. A lot of people can come up with the rational reasons, but the problem with that is that the heart is not motivated by rationale. It's not motivated by the things that make sense to the mind. The heart is motivated when you connect to reality. Right? What's really going to happen in my life? What's it going to look like? right? If I make one choice. And what's my life going to look like if I make the opposite choice? It's really simple, but we're so good at ignoring reality that sometimes we need to take extra measures like Samir did. He wrote out these possibilities. He referred to them on a daily basis. We have to take extra measures to make sure we stay connected to reality, because if we're not proactive about it, we're going to forget, we're going to ignore like we always did in the past. If you don't take that extra step to really know what's at stake, you will never achieve the fruits of changing, right? No matter how much you like the idea of change, if you don't stay connected to the reality of the matter, you won't achieve that change. And you'll continue to experience the pain of staying stuck, no matter how much that pain, no matter how much you dislike and hate to feel that pain. If you don't stay connected to reality, you'll continue to experience that pain. I'm so glad, alhamdulillah, that I got to share this message with you, because kind of reflecting on some thoughts that I've been having lately, I've come to become a firm believer. As difficult as it is to embrace this, I've come to become a firm believer in the possibility of change not happening, right? It's difficult to embrace this, but at the end of the day, some people will go about their life and they won't change. They won't change. And time is not going to change them, and no one is going to come to rescue them and change them. And the reason for that is that without proper intentionality and without taking the proper actions consistently, right, then change just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And so that's why I'm glad to share this message with you, because I hope that you were inspired in this episode to recognize that your recovery requires that you're wholly invested in it. Be intentional about it. Be open to taking consistent action on a daily basis. Invest yourself in it. It requires that in order for it to be experienced. But not only does it require that, it actually deserves it, because recovery is, like we said earlier, the coolest thing that you can do with your life, because it is what opens up the possibility to experience the true human experience that you were created for. I look forward to seeing you, inshallah, for our next episode, where we'll talk about the practical stuff. We talked today about how recovery is about recovering your true self. And next time, inshallah, we're going to talk about the practical side of things and how you can start to adopt habits of self-care, and why that's so important after all, inshallah ta'ala. A reminder that you can always catch the notes, previous episodes, replay at purifyyourgaze.com/kickstart. Thank you for being with me today for episode number 4 of Kickstart Your Recovery, and I will see you next time, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.